joining us today to discuss Consolidated Water's results for second quarter ended June 30th, 2020. Joining us today is Chief Executive Officer of Consolidated Water, Mr. Rick McTaggart, and company's Chief Financial Officer, Mr. David Asnet. Following their remarks, we'll open the call to your questions. Before we conclude today's call, I'll provide some important cautions regarding the forward-looking statements made by management in the call. I'd like to remind everyone that today's call is being recorded and will be made available for telecom replay by instructions in last Friday's press release, which is available in the Investor Relations section of the company's website. Now I'd like to turn the call over to Consolidated Water CEO, Mr. Rick McTaggart. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Nick, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on today's call. During the second quarter, our core water production and distribution and manufacturing operations remained stable and profitable, although at reduced production levels due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This allowed our financial condition and liquidity to remain strong, with cash balances totaling $35 million. In Q2, our services segment revenue was up by more than $3.3 million due to the contribution from PERC Water, our new majority-owned subsidiary that we acquired in the fourth quarter of last year. PERC performed better than we expected in the first half of this year, given the current market conditions created by the pandemic. During the quarter, PERC was awarded 2 new contracts and secured 4 contract renewals for operating and maintaining advanced water treatment plants in California. We continue to see attractive opportunities for PERC in a very active market. PERC's management team is extremely talented and motivated, and when we were presented with the opportunity in early August to increase our ownership in PERC, we seized it and boosted our ownership from 51% to 61%. I'll provide additional information on PERC's growth opportunities later after David discusses our financial results. As has been the case with most businesses, the COVID-19 pandemic adversely impacted all of our segments to varying degrees during the quarter. The volume of water sold by our retail segment and consequently retail revenue dropped by approximately 16% last quarter compared to the previous year's quarter due to the temporary cessation of tourism in the Cayman Islands, resulting from the government actions to close the country in order to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although the Bahamas tourism industry and economy has been severely hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic, our water production volumes remain stable in the Bahamas because our plants primarily serve the general population. Bulk segment revenue generated in the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands declined in the second quarter compared to last year for non-COVID related reasons, which David will explain. Even though COVID-19 has impacted our business, looking beyond the pandemic, our products and services remain public health and economic imperatives for the communities we serve. Customers still need turnkey and affordable sources of drinking water from our desalination plants, and wastewater still must be treated to the highest standards for environmentally responsible disposal or reuse. Consolidated Water remains well-positioned financially, technically, and operationally to address the needs of the communities we serve or will serve in the future. Before I go further, I'd like to turn the call over to David, our CFO, who will take us through the financial details for the quarter. Afterwards, I'll return to talk a little more about our operational activity and outlook for the remainder of the year. David?
Thanks, Rick, and good morning, everyone. As Rick mentioned, our second quarter was impacted significantly by our recently canceled Mexico project and by the COVID-19 pandemic. Rick will discuss the recent developments in Mexico in just a moment. With respect to the remainder of our results, our revenue in the second quarter increased 4% to $19.1 million compared to last year, solely due to the addition of $3.4 million in revenue from PERC. The incremental PERC revenue was partially offset by revenue decreases of $1 million in the retail segment $1.1 million in our bulk segment, and $511,000 in the manufacturing segment. Our retail revenue declined because of a 16% decrease in the volume of water sold due to the lack of tourism on Grand Cayman that resulted from the closing of all Cayman Islands airports and seaports in March 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The decrease in bulk water revenue was primarily due to lower energy costs in the Bahamas, which correspondingly decreased the energy pass-through component of our rates. Our bulk revenue also decreased due to the lower rate that came into effect in July 2019 for the North Side Waterworks plant under our new contract for this plant with the Water Authority Cayman. The decrease in manufacturing revenue was due to a lower number of active projects. Our gross profit for Q2 was $7.3 million, or 38.3% of total revenue, down 3% from $7.6 million, or 41.3% of total revenue in the same quarter last year. In the second quarter of 2020, net loss attributable to Consolidated Water shareholders was $1.1 million, or 7 cents per basic and fully diluted share. This compares to net income of $2.5 million, or 16 cents per basic and fully diluted share in the same period last year. The decrease in our net income was principally due to the $3 million impairment loss that we reported for the rights-of-ways we had acquired for the Mexico project. Turning to our balance sheet, our accounts receivable balances related to our Bahamas business amounted to $19.9 million as of June 30th, 2020, compared to $18.4 million as of December 31st, 2019. We believe the Bahamas government ability to pay in a timely manner has been impacted by COVID-19. However, we're continuing to work with the Bahamian government to collect these receivables. Historically, our Bahamas subsidiary has experienced delays in collecting its accounts receivables of the Water and Sewerage Corporation in the Bahamas. When these delays occur, we hold discussions and meetings with representatives of the Bahamas government. As a result, payment schedules are developed for delinquent accounts receivable. All previous delinquent accounts receivable from the Bahamas were eventually paid in full. Based upon this payment history, we have never, ever been required to provide an allowance for doubtful accounts for any of our accounts receivables for our business in the Bahamas, despite the periodic accumulation of significant delinquent balances. As of June 30th, 2020, we had not provided an allowance for doubtful accounts for our accounts receivable business in the Bahamas. And it's important to note that the Bahamas government made a payment of $4 million on these receivables in the month of July. In June 30th, 2020, our cash and cash equivalents totaled $35 million. Our projected liquidity requirements for the balance of 2020 include capital expenditures for existing operations of about $1 million and about $1.3 million for dividends payable. And it's important to recognize that we spent $900,000 in August to acquire the additional 10% ownership in PERC. We believe our cash position and available funds provide us with sufficient liquidity we need to meet things as we go forward. This wraps up my brief discussion of our financial results for the quarter. Now I'd like to turn the call back over to Rick.
Thanks, David. On June 29th, we received notification that the state of Baja California, Mexico, had terminated our contract for the construction and operation of a desalination plant in Aqueduct, Rosarito, Mexico. Quite frankly, we were shocked and tremendously disappointed with the state's decision to terminate a project that would have provided a drought-proof and natural disaster-resistant drinking water supply to more than 2.5 million people in the region. It's a project that we believed until we received the termination letter that the state both supported and intended to complete. Like most other countries in the world, Mexico's economy has been damaged by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other factors which we believe has reduced the state's revenue sources. Furthermore, the recent devaluation of the peso has made the project more expensive, and this factored into the state's decision to cancel, we understand. At this point, it is uncertain how much, if any, of our developmental costs and investments we can recoup, or how long any such recoupment will take. We are vigorously pursuing all legal remedies and courses of action available under the contract and applicable law with respect to collection of these amounts. Now turning to our business in the Cayman Islands, our operations in Cayman continue to be adversely affected by COVID-19 preventative measures which were enacted by the government back in March. As a result of these measures taken, tourism in the Cayman Islands has temporarily ceased, and economic activity on Grand Cayman has slowed dramatically. The preventative measures taken by the Cayman Islands government in response to the pandemic did not commence until the latter half of March, and thus affected our retail sales primarily in the second quarter. Our retail sales volume for the first 6 months declined only by 3% compared to that same period last year. However, retail sales volume for the second quarter was 16% less than that for the same quarter last year. We also sell bulk water in Grand Cayman to the government-owned water utility, which in turn provides this water to areas that are more residential and less tourist-related. Consequently, our bulk water volumes sold in Grand Cayman were relatively stable compared to the same periods last year, similar to our Bahamas business. In May 2020, the Cayman Islands government started a phased relaxation of the shelter-in-place restrictions at the local level, and most recently the government designated October 1st, 2020 as the planned date for the phased reopening of the Cayman Islands borders, although this date is subject to reassessment at this time, or at the time in October. We expect that the retail segment revenue and cash flows will continue to be materially adversely impacted until such time as tourism and the economy in the Cayman Islands recovers from the impact and effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. For our business in the Bahamas, tourist travel to New Providence Island, where we operate, has been suspended, and economic activity in the Bahamas has slowed dramatically as a result of COVID-19. In May, the Bahamian government relaxed some of the shelter-in-place regulations and reinstated the regulations effective August 4th through August 19th, at least. In July, the government enacted a limited reopening of the Bahamas to air travel, reinstated travel restrictions, and shortly thereafter due to the increased COVID-19 cases. While the world is focused on defeating the global pandemic, global challenges with water availability and shortages continue to grow, and desalination and water reuse continue to present the best solutions in many areas around the world. Today, nearly 90 million cubic meters of water is being produced daily by more than 18,500 desalination plants in operation globally. These plants are providing drinking water to more than 300 million people. So as we look to expand geographic reach beyond our current areas of operation, our mission remains focused on providing water services to those areas of the world where the supply of naturally occurring potable water is scarce, and particularly areas where reverse osmosis technology is economically and environmentally feasible. Historically, we focused on seawater desalination projects in the Caribbean, where government and private customers long ago embraced our design, build, own, and operate project delivery model. However, because of the extreme financial strains caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, we believe that many state and local governments in the United States will find our project delivery model well suited to expand and improve vital water services for these cash-strapped communities. In addition to the growing demand for potable water, water management challenges are also increasing the opportunity for wastewater treatment and reuse projects. Our acquisition of PERC, which is based in Southern California, represented a major step toward addressing this growth market and its many emerging opportunities. Similar to our existing approach, PERC provides their customers with a comprehensive solution deploying or upgrading their water infrastructure. They develop, design, and build state-of-the-art facilities for both water and wastewater recycling, then provide ongoing operational and management services to keep these facilities operating at peak performance. Since PERC's founding in 1998, it has completed and continues to support numerous water infrastructure projects, including new facilities, facility upgrades, short and long-term operation services, and asset management engagement. For this, they won numerous industry awards recognizing their innovative designs and highly efficient project delivery model. At present, PERC generates this revenue from operations and maintenance contracts for water treatment and reuse facilities owned by third parties. Given the challenging market conditions brought on by COVID-19, PERC performed better in the first half of the year than we expected. PERC secured, as I mentioned earlier, 2 new O&M contracts effective April, as well as 4 contract extensions in the first half of the year. We expect PERC's 2 new O&M contracts to add revenues of approximately $1.7 million in the second half of this year. PERC's growth is largely due to its excellent product and service offerings and its strong presence in the southwest of the United States, where water supplies are increasingly under stress. PERC has been highly complementary to our existing business and overall mission, supporting our pursuit of water reuse projects and other emerging opportunities with a comprehensive suite of solutions for improving water infrastructure. PERC also provides us a solid platform upon which to expand to North America, our core business of designing, constructing, and operating desalination plants. Given these compelling growth factors, earlier this week, we acquired an additional 10% in PERC from another shareholder for $900,000, raising our ownership to 61%. Overall, Consolidated Water continues to be well-positioned to successfully navigate these uncertain and turbulent times, thanks to a strong balance sheet and well-established growth strategy that brought us PERC as we anticipate other successful future acquisitions. Looking beyond the pandemic, we expect the growth drivers inherent in our markets to persist over the long term, which bodes well for Consolidated Water and our efforts to enhance shareholder value over the years to come. Now with that, I'd like to open the call for questions. Nick?
Well, I'll begin the question and answer session. To ask a question, you may press star then 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you're using a speakerphone, please pick up your handset before pressing the keys. To withdraw your question, please press star then 2. At this time, we'll pause momentarily to assemble the roster. First question comes from Jerry Sweeney of Roth Capital. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Rick. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Jerry.
Just wanted to talk a little bit about PERC, since it was, some of the key points that you raised in your remarks. I'm assuming that $1.7 million of the O&M contracts that you're expecting to hit in the second half of 2020. I mean, can we extrapolate that out to like $3.4 million on a full year basis?
Jerry, this is David. Well, you could for those particular contracts. PERC has a number of contracts that are up for renewal. That's just part of their business. So when you look forward trying to project their revenues, if you want to assume that they'll get renewals of all existing contracts, then, that would be a reasonable assumption. But we did add a risk factor in our 10Q this quarter to point out the fact that a number of these contracts expire over the course of the next few months. I think the deadline we provided, or the time frame we provided, was July of 2021. We are hopeful that they can get renewals of all those contracts. There are renewal options in the contracts exercisable at the discretion of the customer. So, PERC's O&M business is fluid because of the renewal processes, but, over the long term, we hope to continue to grow that business because PERC's proven to be very good at bringing in new contracts and also obtaining extensions of existing contracts. But I don't think it's fair just to automatically extrapolate going forward. I think it requires it's a little less certain than that.
Okay. taking a half a step back, maybe I misinterpreted when I read the Q, but I thought, for the press release, I thought there's 2 new O&M contracts that you won just recently had a value of $1.7 million in the second half of this year.
That's correct.
Just those 2, right? But then how long is the average contract for PERC?
The average contract for PERC it ranges anywhere from 1 to 5 years.
Okay.
So when you're projecting, when you're projecting O&M revenue, some of those contracts come up for renewal. Assuming that we get the renewals, then revenue will continue to grow, and if everything else remained the same and we renewed all the contracts and got them more contracts, the impact of the new contracts would be incremental revenue over a 12-month period of about a little over $3 million, close to $3.4 million. But there are other factors that go into the O&M revenue. So.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question was, on the O&M side, or I guess it's in the services side, how much of that is O&M from PERC and how much of it is design, build PERC?
I believe that's exposed in our Q. I'll take a look at it real quick here.
Right.
You look at, actually, Jerry, if you look at the risk factor, it puts out exactly how much. And
I will look at that. I have it here, but I'll just do it.
That could change before the end of the year as well, Jerry. I mean, that depends on when the design. I said that could change the mix before the end of the year, depending on the design build.
So, how many?
And I have the number here for you, Jerry. For the 3 months ended, PERC's O&M revenue was $2.5 million, and for the 6 months ended, it was $4.1 million. That's their O&M revenue.
I apologize. I did not read everything but the risk factors, and
it's okay.
Came on. I apologize on that front. I was just going through. That's helpful. So, then maybe switch gears to the revenue on the desal business, Caymans and the Bahamas. So obviously, the Caymans and the Bahamas are shut down for tourism. Is this a decent run rate on revenue or volumes in this sort of COVID world where there isn't tourism? And then conversely, I know historically there's also been some seasonality as tourism has picked up, but does that change because the weather gets a little cooler potentially and there is no tourism? I'm just trying to see how we look at the revenue from that on the water side from that perspective.
Jerry, the other big factor.
Yep.
On the Cayman,
energy, right?
Jerry.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rick.
So the first half of the year is typically our biggest sales in the business because of it's drier conditions and tourism is up. So, the 16% drop we saw in the second quarter, I think that's fairly indicative of what we should expect through the end of this year. Historically, rainfall has also impacted the sales slightly from time to time, but a 16% change because the hotels are closed, I'd say that's a pretty consistent way to look at it in the retail segment going forward. Mm-hmm. And just to remind you, the bulk segments were not adversely impacted on volume sales because of COVID. It was other things, which, again, we can roll forward because they were basically one-time events. The contract changes in Cayman, and then the electricity rates. If you think electricity is going to continue to be low, then, that's going to be the impact on the sales going forward.
Got it. I should have delineated. I understood bulk was less, but did not have a COVID. It was more.
Let me just, Jerry, let me point out 2 additional things. The energy pass-through doesn't have a huge impact on margins, so you should keep that in mind. And the other thing is, don't discount the impact of rainfall. If it was really dry in Grand Cayman, out of necessity, the existing population would have to use more water. And we have seen significant fluctuations in the volume of water used in times of excessive rainfall and during droughts. So I think the 16% decrease gives you a good indication of how much of the water we sell on 7 Mile Beach relates to tourism, but it's not an absolute number.
No, absolutely. It's a broad brush. And then the third question, I'll jump back in line. Mexico costs, they were down this quarter, but obviously a disappointment that Rosarito is not coming through. How do we look at these costs? How do they run down for the second half of this year into next year? I mean, you had some lease costs that I know you terminated. I think there were $26,000 the other month or $30,000 a month. You had probably some salary there. You probably have some third-party costs associated with legal now. Any type of guidance that you can provide on where some of those costs could go over the next 2 to 4 quarters?
So, Jerry, on the lease, just to clarify, we said that we expect to terminate it or to transfer to the state. So we haven't terminated the CFB lease yet. On the cost side of it, the running costs for the business obviously are tapering down. We still have staff there that are dealing with the claim. So I wouldn't expect, a huge change in those numbers, at least until we get our arms around how the state's going to view our claim. And then we'll obviously have some legal costs going forward to try to recoup our money there to defend the claim. So, I say they're going to be low, but I really can't say how much. I mean, if this is a prolonged legal exercise, it could, it could take more time to get it resolved.
Got it. And then on the claims front, it was my understanding that you had some, at least in the contract, some ability to recoup costs, at least on the assets, but was there an opportunity, and I'll paint this as potential, but is there an opportunity to recoup some costs not only on the asset investment side, but also, manpower type capital invested in the project?
Yeah, I mean, the contract law gives us the right to recoup all of our costs that related to the development of the project and the assets that we purchased to execute the project. So, that's what we intend to do. As we mentioned in the queue, we've done some legal challenges of the timetable to submit, a tally of these costs, and that was successful. So it gives us a little more time to get everything in order and get it in the correct, official formats that the state wants for the submission. So we're moving forward with finalizing our numbers and finalizing the submission to the state, and we'll let everybody know when that goes in and what the reactions are in due course.
Got it. I appreciate it. Pretty solid quarter, I think, considering circumstances. So, but I'll jump back to you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Again, if you have a question, please press star, then 1. Our next question is from Michael Gagler, Janney Montgomery Scott. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
First question on Cayman in general. Is the government indicating that tourism will probably be ceased through year end, and then kind of as a follow-up, how are the finances on Cayman with tourism down for such a prolonged period? Does the government continue to have the ability to pay its bills?
Yeah, so your guess is as good as mine on when they're going to actually open back up, Mike. They've said October 1st, subject to review at the time. And, you know, they'd said September 1st, and then as that got closer, they changed it. So, I don't know, they're really very concerned about bringing the virus back into the country. You know, they've been virus-free for, 3 or 4 weeks now, no cases. So, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I hope that they open it back up by the end of the year. And then it'll be up to the tourists to decide whether they want to go through the screening procedures that most countries are requiring to travel now. But, from the standpoint of their financial position, I think Cayman is one of the better positions around the world. I mean, they haven't had much debt historically, so I think they're doing a borrowing. I don't remember how many million it is right now. They're going through a competitive process to borrow some money to keep things moving along, but they certainly have a good credit rating, and they don't have much debt. So I would expect them to be able to weather this quite well, over the medium term.
Okay. That's all I had, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, Mike.
Again, if you have a question, please press star, then 1. Next question comes from John Baer, Accent Wealth Advisors. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Rick and David.
Good morning, John.
2 questions. Your information about PERC seems to be that they are geographically focused in the Southwest. So the question is, wondering whether they operate in other parts of the country. Is there expansion potential there, or do they have operations outside of the Southwest? And secondly on that, do they do any international work, or are there any opportunities there that they're either actively involved in or looking to do?
Yeah, so, John, at present, they don't have active projects or operations outside of the Southwest. So they're primarily California, Arizona, Utah. We've combined our business development teams, obviously, with the acquisition. So they are working with us, looking at a project in Florida and also a major project with some partners up in Oregon. So those projects would be, they're definitely good projects, and PERC is well qualified to do them. So that's one of the things that they've leveraged off of us on, having exposure to different markets, and we expect their business to grow into these markets in the future.
What about a big state like Texas or that area? I mean, certainly water needs and badly in those areas as well. Do they have any?
No, not at the moment. But again, we've been following projects in Texas for a number of years on the desal side. So the combination of the business development teams, I think, will pay dividends in some of these other states. We don't do anything in Oklahoma. I'm not aware of anything up there, but certainly Texas, Florida, California, Arizona, Oregon, those are the areas that the business development team is most focused on at the moment.
Okay, great. And then another question is the Rose Reed project. How long would, I don't know how to phrase this actually, but how long do you try to pursue this? Is there any time clock ticking on what you have to do to get resolution? And do you have any sense if there is any possibility that it be resurrected and that the come back to the table and say, let's go ahead and pursue it? I mean, I realize that the economic situation there is tough, but a lot of potential water for their folks down there that isn't going to be available. So, curious.
Obviously, my opinion is that, it's a big mistake what they did. I mean, just from a technical standpoint, but so much water right now. It could come back to it. I have no idea what they have in mind, what the reaction will be when we present the claim. But obviously, the driver here was that the economic conditions had changed in the region, and it didn't make, what they told us in the termination letters that the project was not financially feasible. So it's kind of, it's hard to say, but I mean, we'll work with them however they want. I mean, my main goal is to try to recover our costs and our investment, costs at the moment. And if anything else, any other opportunity presents itself, then we'll certainly look at it.
Is there any information that in other words, they've had access to the plans or anything like that they could kind of utilize on their own if they decided to try to build that project themselves at this point? Is there anything along those lines, or?
Well, I mean, we did a lot of work just developing the intake strategy, the ocean intake, the lease, on the power plant site, the permitting, all that was done, for that particular site. So, unless they're going to do a large plant like was envisioned with our project, I don't know that they'll be able to use any of that stuff. So, my goal is really to recover the costs in developing those permits and that, that site plan for the intake structures. The actual designs of the plant, we never got far enough where we were presenting any of those for approval to the state, so they don't have access to any of that information.
Okay. All right. That's very disappointing, and have an epiphany event and change their minds, and you can proceed on, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. So, all right, thank you very much for the rest of your.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
This concludes our question and answer session. Now I'd like to turn the conference back over to Mr. Rick McTaggart for any closing remarks. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I'd just like to, again, thank everybody for dialing in today, and I wish you all the best, and we'll talk to you again, I guess, in November. Take care, and stay safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, now before we conclude today's call, I'd like to provide the company's safe harbor statement that includes cautions regarding forward-looking statements made during today's call. The information that we have provided in this call includes forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Included, but not limited to, statements regarding the company's future revenue, future plans, objective, expectation and events, assumptions, and estimates. Forward-looking statements can be identified by the use of words or phrases, usually containing the words believe, estimate, project, intend, expect, should, will, or similar expressions. Statements that are not historical facts are based on the company's current expectations, beliefs, assumptions, estimates, forecasts, and projections for its business and the industry and markets related to its business. Any forward-looking statement made during this conference call are not guarantees of future performance and involve certain risks, uncertainties, and assumptions which are difficult to predict. Actual outcomes and results may differ materially from what is expressed in such forward-looking statements. Important factors which may affect these actual outcomes and results include, are but not limited to, continued acceptance of the company's projects and services in the marketplace, changes in its relationship with the governments of the jurisdictions in which it operates, the outcome of negotiations with the Cayman government regarding a new retail license agreement, the future financial performances of its subsidiaries that manufactures water treatment-related systems and projects and provide the design, engineering, management, operating, and other services applicable to commercial, municipal, and industrial water production. The collection of its delinquent accounts receivables in the Bahamas. Its ability to enter and profitably operate recently acquired subsidiary, the ERC Water Corporation. The possible adverse impact of the COVID-19 virus on the company's business, and various other risks as detailed in the company's periodic reportings with the Securities Exchange Commission. For more information about risks and uncertainties associated with the company's business, please refer to the Management's Discussion and Analysis of Financial Conditions and Results of Operations and Risk Factor section of the company's SEC filings, included but not limited to its annual report on the Form 10-K and quarterly reports for Form 10-Q. Any forward-looking statement made during the conference call speaks as of today's date. The company expressly disclaims any obligations or undertaking to update or revise any forward-looking statements made during the conference call to reflect any changes in its expectations with regard thereto or any changes in its events, conditions, or circumstances of which any forward-looking statement is based, except as where it may be required by law. Before we could end today's conference call, I'd like to remind everyone that this call will be available for replay starting later this evening and running through August 24th. Please refer to today's earnings release for dial-in replay instructions available by the company's website at www.CWCO.com. Thank you for attending today's presentation. This concludes the conference call. You may now disconnect.